Hello and welcome to another episode of ResourceFULL. It's number 18. My name's Tom Manners and all my previous interviews have been on YouTube, but also through my website on tommanners.co.uk. I'm a little bit thrown today because my webcam camera's not working, so my visualizer's turned upside down. I'm looking to my left and I'll be going this way and that way, and I've got my notes for the interview here, and I've got the book from today's guest here as well. So lots of movement, but some great listening going to be for the next hour because it's certainly for me, in the last 6 months during some of my teaching, the author of today's website is where I go first now. I just love the design of so many of the tasks that are shared, and I'm seeing other people share what I will call McGrane-esque tasks. The website I'm of course referring to is Starting Point Maths, and so I welcome Chris McGrane. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Hi Tom, great to be here.
And I do reiterate, and I'm not lying to you either, I can tell you that I've used tasks on speed, distance, time. In fact, I'll share that straight away because I really enjoyed the fact that when you, for this resource, let me find it, I should have had it on screen straight away. The fact the activities on the left-hand side to make it real was there, but I did multiplication of integers, which is another one here. When I was introducing negative numbers, your website was where I went to because you've got that visual element as well. So again, I am really a huge fan of your work. So let's find out more about you and then find out about the website and its creation. So first and foremost, if you tell us about you and your background.
Yeah, well, where to begin? Yeah, so I'm head of maths at a secondary school in Glasgow. It's my second head of maths job. Those two head of maths jobs sandwiched about a year and a half working for LaSalle Education. I was out doing PD for them. I was the maths lead in Scotland, so all over the place, fair bit of travel. Enjoyed that. Still trying to keep my hand in with the PD kind of side of things, but you know, my heart's in the classroom, so I was keen to get back and to get stuck into it again. And then this year happened, so I actually started my new job in April, just as the lockdown kicked in. So it's been an interesting start, to say the least.
How many times have you actually met your maths team?
Yeah, it was months before we actually had a face-to-face meeting. But yeah, so it's been about 15 years of teaching so far. And just like everyone, you're constantly learning, constantly trying to improve. And I'd say over the past 5 or 6 years in particular, you become aware of stuff. I suppose I always read a bit, but I've read significantly more over the past few years. And I think the teaching's benefited from that, as has perhaps like the leadership of a department and trying to build a curriculum as well from that. But you know, I'm not where I want to be, and I've got a long way to go, as I'm sure any good reflective teacher should be saying that, I think, anyway.
I get that same feeling that you feel like you should know it all, but the truth is you're always going to learn more, and you forget things. And certainly in the last 72 hours, I'm going to say hello to Aaron because he's really looking forward to this interview, by the way. Hi, Aaron. He forwarded a document to me that Swan wrote in 2006. And I was like, I've read about that recently, and I remembered it again because I just seen it years ago, but forgotten. But I remember seeing it in your book. There it is, the first plug of many over the course of the next however long. And you continually do forget old stuff, don't you? And so it's forever reading. And I think we're now in a profession more than ever that people are willing to share more and read more. And that's it's great that we've got that attitude. It's great to hear yours as well.
I can remember being in so many different CPD courses myself as a delegate over the years, and the presenter will share something and you'll think, oh, I used to do that. And it's like, hold on a minute, yeah, well, why did I stop? You move school or whatever it was, and you forget about things, and it's like, hold on. You want to hold on to the best of everything, and I think that's part of where the website idea has kind of come from, but I'll talk about that as we go through.
So, I mean, the website Starting Points Maths. So, was it because you just wanted to share your thoughts or share your tasks, and why the name as well?
Well, basically, I had two websites. I had a blog, and I had this task, Starting Points Maths, where I was sharing tasks, and now I must say at the outset, they're not all by me. I'd probably say about 90% of the tasks on it are by me, but I do host some tasks from other people. almost entirely from Scotland. So it's teachers up here. And I've got some from teachers who have attended a course I've been running online on task design. So, for instance, the one you showed at the beginning there with speed, distance, time, that's from a teacher in Edinburgh called Seager Rogers, and he based that upon some of the stuff we talked about in the course. Anyway, the name is what you asked me about, and I think at the outset, what I kind of wanted to do was I wanted to have somewhere that I could gather ideas I saw and ideas I tried out in class, which weren't routine procedural practice. I wanted it to be about intelligent task design. And because, you know, that there's so many drill exercises out there, like if you want to give kids 50 questions where they're just practicing, well, there's no shortage of that. So I wanted somewhere just to gather my own tasks over the years, because one of the things that kind of frustrated me was the number of times over the years where I'd maybe impromptu written a task on the board and it worked really well with the kids, and then you wipe it out from the board and it's gone. And you think the next year, what? Because I'm not very organized. I'm not one of these teachers that's got PowerPoints and Smartboard slides. I don't teach like that. It's a pen and a board, and the tasks are the things that I hold on to year on year, not the slides, not the presentation. And I wasn't holding on to that. And there were a number of good colleagues up here in Scotland as well who were sharing interesting stuff at the time. And I wanted these tasks to be, in some way, starting points for a mathematical conversation, which is partly where the name is from. But it's also, but they're not necessarily for the start of a learning journey. They're not necessarily for introducing a topic. They could be revision, you throw it in, but it's at the start of a dialogue. It's at the start of thinking. I think that's what I'm trying to get at there with starting points as being the name of the site.
I mean, you talked about the procedural variation, and I know in the book you write and you refer to Skemp's paper in 1976, the relational understanding and the importance of the two combined, and you said about how differentiation, that you want to teach the concept first and foremost. And you even said, even though you explained the concept numerous times, you're still not sure if they've understood it by the end of it. And it's that procedural balance. And I think I always see the Venn diagram with the procedural fluency versus conceptual understanding, and that sweet spot in the middle is what we're aiming for. But your task, I mean, you wrote about also I think it was fractions of an amount. And so there's the procedure, divide by the denominator, multiply the numerator. But as soon as you put the bar model in there, it becomes conceptual. And you don't take away the procedure, and I that's probably a large number of your tasks encourage that. There's going to be the method, there's going to be the visual, the question, the visual, the method, the answer, and that's the but as I said, McGrane-esque style task that I call. If I see that, I'm thinking, oh, that's McGrane.
Yeah, the idea is that some of I can't remember exactly who the person was that wrote the paper. It'll be a reference in the book somewhere. But the idea that conceptual understanding and procedural fluency are not a dichotomy. You don't just have a focus on one or a focus on the other. In fact, they can develop iteratively. And what the research said was that an improvement in one can therefore lead to an improvement in the other. And using the fraction of an amount example you're talking about, like for instance, if a kid is trying to remember, and you'll hear them say things like, I divide by the bottom, then times by the top. And that is trying to do the procedure in isolation. Whereas if they've been forced to think about the concept while they do it, by way of a bar model, for instance.
Just going to share the screen because I had that one ready.
What they've got here now is a concept image, which they can fall back upon and they can use. So it's less about remembering,
but
you've all tried to remember.
You've also, though, Chris, I mean, look at the choice of numbers in this question. Is this one of yours, by the way? Because if it's somebody else's again, I'm going to feel really bad that I'm choosing ones that aren't yours. Because you've got a third of 12, 2/3 of 12, 3/3 of 12, making the connections between the questions, which is the conceptual variation we often talk about, and then noticing that a quarter is therefore smaller, even though the denominator is bigger. People obviously get that as a misconception, but realize that means we're chopping it into 4 equal parts, so that each part is smaller, and then you've taken away the scaffold as well as it's gone along. So I just really like this look of this look of task design, and yeah, as I say, McGrane's-esque.
Yeah, I suppose one of the things that I'm at pains to talk about in the book quite a lot is it kind of comes back to John Mason, and what he said is there's no such thing as a rich task. There's only a task that's used richly. And I think with a task like that, there, if you were just to download that, print it out for your class or put it on their devices or whatever, and they go and do it, they might not attend to what you want them to attend to. So what I'm a big believer in is the power of the classroom dialogue, and that is the kids telling you what they spot. It's not about you saying, "Oh, did you see what you were meant to notice?" It's about the teacher drawing that from the pupil, and getting their insights, and then building upon that further and posing the what if questions and this sort of thing. So it's not just about that stuff. Those design considerations are definitely in the task, but it's then those fall on deaf ears if the teacher isn't sensitized to those, if the teacher isn't aware of those design considerations and then doesn't tap into it. So the pedagogical potential of any task is dictated by the teacher. And I think that's one of the things I've realised over the years, that some of Don Stewart's stuff, for instance, I'd done it a complete disservice years ago. And when you see some of Don's PowerPoints in terms of how he would work through the sequence of tasks and how he would have used those tasks and brought them to life, it was game changing for me. Completely different level of thinking from the way I'd been using it, which was essentially, here's a sheet, go and do it. And it's a much richer pedagogy around about it. So sometimes we need to be wary about like a website like mine where it's a task. And that's why one of the things I always try and do in the website underneath the task is have a little paragraph just explaining some of the thinking behind it. I don't always have lots to say, but sometimes it might end up in a few hundred words. Other times it's just a paragraph. But if there's significant thinking behind it and there's deliberate things in there, then I want to kind of convey that to the teacher to help them make the best use of it. Because it's all very well me knowing what I was trying to do with the task, but that might not be obvious just from looking at the task.
I'm going to share a quote from the book, if I may, in that it reminds me, when you're talking about John Stewart, I remember when I first met the John Stewart tasks when I started teaching, and I didn't like it because it didn't have the answers. And so I never really engaged with it, and that's the lazy SOB that I was. But something you wrote about task design, through designing or refining tasks, teachers are able to experience for themselves what the pupil will go through, and by doing so to plan pedagogic choices for key moments. And that's another reminder that we should be doing the tasks. You know, building the task is one thing. Refining tasks, again, we don't, not after everybody to reinvent the wheel. There are great websites with so many great tasks. Just by, if you want to adapt them, well, why have you adapted it, and what changes does that make to the lesson? What changes it make to the pupil's thinking, to the pupil's tasks, the pupil's actions? But it is another reminder of you've got to do the task yourself. But you also refer to, as you say, starting points. And it's nice to hear where that's come from. The starting point for the conversation. Why this task? What are we going to achieve from it? What are the pupils going to achieve from it? Because I know earlier in the book you also say, I'm going to get these wrong. But what is it? In fact, I know I put it on one of my PowerPoint slides again, about the three elements. Just like, what do you want? Oh, the task as intended. In fact, I'll share it on screen again. If I press the right button, and that wasn't just everyone else. All the other ones have been quite smooth. This one hasn't been. There we go. The task as intended by the writer. The intention of the teacher who selects the task. In other words, the actions, I assume, in the classroom. And then what the pupil actually does.
And there's quite a gap there, isn't there? A lot can be lost in translation. But the flip side of that is that doesn't necessarily need to be a negative thing. Like you can take a very poor, well, a very dry textbook exercise, and the textbook author might have just said this very mundane, I need 50 questions on finding fractions of amounts. Whereas the teacher actually can maybe mine better mathematical activity out of that for the kids. For instance, can you...
I've got to grab a book. Go on, I'll show that in a minute. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so you can take it and you can draw something else out of it sometimes, using a range of different questions and strategies and what have you in there.
It was the Swan paper, which again, reading your book reminded me to go back to 2006, and Tom Frankham always speaks about this book. I think that, and that's what you're talking about. I think really, it's the mathematician that we are in the classroom that can adapt. You can take any standard questions and think, well, what if I change this? And I know I read that in there. What changes can I make to make this a challenge? What's the word I'm looking for? What can I remove from the question to make it kind of more open, if you like?
Yeah, there's a nice there's a little book called The Joy of Problem Posing, and they cite it, Prestige and Parks. They cite this little book, and they talk about what if not, and that it's a framework for taking a task. So let's say you've got any particular task, and you list every attribute of it. So, for instance, let's say it's find the volume of this cuboid, right? And it gives you some dimensions. And you list every attribute there. So the first attribute is volume, second attribute is cuboid. You list each of the 3 dimensions, anything else you can see about it. And then you think, I'm going to change. What would happen if I changed one of those? Now, it might be just by changing one of the attributes, like maybe, let's say I'm going to change this so it's now about not a cuboid, it's a cube. Or it might be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the dimensions and I'm just going to change one of the dimensions. So I'm going to increment let's say the height of the cuboid by, I'm going to put it in increments of 10. And we're going to see what happens to the volume as we do this. So it's a related sequence of questions now, as opposed to just random ones. And we're getting this idea here that by increasing the height by 10, we're having an effect then on the volume. But a more interesting version of that would maybe be what scale factor. If you've got linear scale factor and area scale factor, for instance, if we increase the length by, we double that, it would double in the air. These sorts of things can come out of it. But it's basically just a little framework for thinking, is there anything in there I can change? Why would I change it? What thinking can I elicit from that? Or can I come up with an entirely new problem from this? Can I generate a problem solving question, perhaps something unseen for the kids based upon this?
I really like those questions. What happens if? What happens if I change this? What happens if the volume stayed the same, but as you said, maybe the height changes? That means the width must increase, or whatever it might be. They're really nice questions. So that's the conceptual part, because it's so easy just to think, oh, they perform the procedure 20 times, they understand it. They didn't understand it necessarily. They just did it. Can you, I think I've given you the facility of sharing. I hope I have anyway. Otherwise, we'll have to do one of those awkward 30-second pauses. Take us to the website and talk us through, because I know there's been some new uploads this week. This is mid-January at the time of recording. But maybe talk us through how a teacher would use the website, what some of the benefits and some of the stuff that you're sharing with people so kindly. It'd be great to hear it from your perspective.
I'm just waiting on my computer responded to this. Open system preferences.
That's all right. The 30 seconds gap I can more than fill. So I'll hold this back up to the screen and give people a chance to see what it was. It's really nice. It is that idea of that change of that constant. If that stayed constant, what if I change this? And I think that's some of the premises of variation. It becomes problem solving and real conceptual thinking. I'll be mentioning this over and over. So while Chris is trying to get Zoom to work, mathematical tasks, the bridge between teaching and learning. A nice choice of title, if I may say, as well, because I think you've written something similar in there. There's what we do, and I've lost it. Brilliant. I think I can press pause, so the 30 seconds is no longer needed. So I'm going to press pause. I'm thinking that's worked. So I didn't have Twitter on. Chris is back, which is great. I was talking just to myself, I suppose, about the choice of the word bridge, because there's the teaching, there's what the pupils learn, but how do they learn it? It's actually the task that you choose to give them, isn't it? So that's why you've used, I assume, the term the bridge between them, which is a really nice analogy. Yeah,
to be honest with you, like I'd pretty much written the book, and Mark McCourt, he kind of edited the book for me, and basically he wrote the opening.
I bet you didn't argue back with him, did you? You just told, you said
yeah. So he wrote the opening, the wee kind of introduction to me, and he wrote also the ending, or the last couple of paragraphs in the conclusion chapter, and a couple of bits throughout. But he was there as a kind of critical friend, and he did a good job at that, I think. So I struggled with the name of it. I'd written it, but I just couldn't think what to call it. And I had some obscure kind of ways of thinking about it. How some of them are just complete jumbles of words. But Mark kind of was the one who came up with the title for the book, and I'm glad he did. I think it captures the essence of it.
Well, let's now look through the website. So again, take us through what the benefits are to the teachers, why you'd want people to use your website. And I know, as I said earlier, you've uploaded some new things. So it's great to hear it from your perspective.
Right, well, when you first come out the website, startingpointsmaths.com, you get this screen here, which is basically latest tasks, and it'll just show you all the tasks that are on here in time order, going back the way. And it'll load back. It's not very efficient doing it that way. Over here at the side, we've got top posts and pages. So the stuff that's been popular over the past week or so is in there. Probably the best way to access this is in tasks by topic. And in here, we've got by topic headings, and down the bottom as well, there's also by category tags. And there's also this thing here about latest tasks. So this is another way into it, and there's also a search feature. So the idea here for the classroom teacher, I think part of the focus on some of the tasks in here are about helping teachers to develop the understanding, perhaps, of new methodologies and new pedagogical approaches. So, for instance, negative numbers was something you talked about.
Indeed.
And like in my department, the department hadn't used the teaching of negative numbers using algebra tiles before. So naturally, I would want in the resources I'm putting together some tasks to build upon that. Oops, bring that back. How have I done that? Didn't mean that. And in there, you can see if I click on that, I get the task. And the idea here is it's about zero pairs. Is this a zero pair, true or false? And then adding extra counters. And the idea here is for a teacher that hasn't done this stuff and maybe even hasn't been on PD, they've maybe had a quick chat in the department office one day. The idea here is they can go in and the task will take them through as well, so they can understand the model and the metaphor. So after that, perhaps we're going off and we're going to look at adding negatives then, and it's scaffolded again here. And the way we want to go about it is we've got 5 plus -2, 5 plus, and then we're using that notation, the superscript, negative, the tiles, in words, the answer. And this task is designed to take the teacher through that. So it's as well as for the kids as for the teacher. So it's supporting both.
Yeah.
It is designed to give the kids something to lean on. But what I would say is there's no one task in isolation will ever do the job. Like people say, oh, how your kid's going to be fluent with big numbers and negative numbers if they don't, like large negative numbers if they just use that, because those numbers are all small. Well, I'm going to assume it's not the only task you're ever going to give them. You're going to give them all sorts of things. This task here, the alternative representation of integers, this was something which I was inspired by Don Stewart, and it kind of, I talk about this in the book, it kind of get developed iteratively over Twitter. But the idea here is we're looking at the kind of the generality and the addition and subtraction then of integers. And so the idea of these tasks, I suppose, is it's to bring the concepts to life. It's to help the kids get fluent. It's that one there to me is a starting point, like I talked about, like starting point. That is, when I did that a couple of months ago in my own class, the conversations out of that were amazing. And the kids then had to generate their own examples. Can you create a question which looks like type H? And then come up with your conclusion based upon that. Some of them didn't even need to think about specifics. They said, no, I just know that's going to be more negative. Others had to go to the specifics before they could answer, which is fine, but it's the conversation. Similarly, there's other ones in there for the different operations on negative numbers and so on. There's a whole host of stuff in here. So there's the stuff in there which is upper primary, early secondary, and then it goes all the way up to A-level advanced higher as it is here in Scotland. So for instance, asymptotes tasks, and again to this one. And it's a matching task. It's of the form that Malcolm Swan would have written in the standards units. It's inspired by him. So here we've got some rational functions. Here are some curves, some more. And then what I've said is I've actually written a blog post about this one. And sometimes I'll do that. There'll be an extended piece of writing, task design considerations in here. And I go off and I talk quite a bit of length about the thinking behind it and the choice of things that's going on there. So that's all kind of part of the rationale here as well. So it straddles the whole secondary curriculum. And there's a whole host of stuff in here, like, for instance, some of the tasks might actually end up being problem solving, like this one here. That's not about developing new procedural fluency or conceptual understanding. This is about, there are no numbers there. Yeah. Go see what you can do, because the other part of maths teaching we need to focus on is the development of mathematical behaviours and mathematical thinking, and that losing the anxiety. You do know enough to do quite a lot of that. Go and see where you get to. And then where you get to and where you don't manage to move on from, that's when I know I need to talk to you and maybe give you some new mathematics to help you deal with it. So there's that kind of thing in there. For some reason, the angle chases are incredibly popular, and you can imagine it took like 2 minutes to knock that together. But for some reason, tasks like that gets an inordinate number of downloads. That kind of thing.
For parallel lines tasks for next week. I haven't planned some of the lessons, so I now know I'm going back to that. That would be fun.
Yeah. I'll come in. I'm keeping it up the scale a little bit here, but I'll come back because it's the task design principles in here. Like the idea of, where is it? Not this one. It's actually in the trig. Trig tasks.
See the trig, I can see trig matching there, and I just want to. You said earlier on about you saw stuff on a training session years ago and you forgot about it. It was looking in your book and engaging with your website and that blog actually about the asymptotes, and reminded me about the swan thing that said when you do your matching pairs, leave some blank, because they can't then do it by elimination. There has to be an element of explanation and exploration as well. So you do get, again, that's why I'm loving doing this series, but you should be going back and reflecting the whole time, because there's stuff you did, and like, well, why wouldn't you leave a gap in a matching task? It's almost ridiculous that I forgot that.
This one here, again, it's up the school a bit, but I'll go back down the school in a moment. Talking about introduction of Radian measure, and essentially all I did this year was I gave the kids a task. I said, explain what radians were, showed them the animation and what have you that's kicking about, that nice GIF that's kicking about out there. I said, go and do what you can here. In the past, I'd have talked to them a lot about it, and I basically just let them get on with it, and I circulated the classroom, seeing how they were getting on. And by getting out the way of the kids, they made such fantastic progress on this, converting from degrees to radians, understanding radians as a decimal, the diagrammatic representation, because it is a measure of turn, it's not arbitrary, so think about that. And then obviously flipping it here, and then ramping up the challenge. If it's a decimal, what do you think it could be, and making connections and so on. And not like, but that kind of task format, as you see, like I use that often. Not here, sorry. Might click fractions. Fraction tasks, for instance. So the idea with the one we were on earlier. Yeah, this one here's another one. It's a decimal matchup. I'm bringing this up a bit. This is a challenging one. This is not an easy one. This is a bit more advanced, but about the 7 ones, 5 tenths, and 200s. And basically the idea is you cut these up and you reorder them. So you've got it in words, you've got it in decimal, you've got it as a fraction over a multiple of 10. You've then got it expressed in a number of thousandths. And then you've got it as an addition of some fractions. So that's very difficult, but that's like an extension task on place value, making connections there. And it's a card sort activity. And again, you can do the same sort of thing, but making it a bit easier. But that's extension for kids who are coping well with that at that level.
I was thinking this on some of the tasks you used earlier on. You're quite determined to make sure the right language is used quite clearly. And that task there, even just talking about thousandths, is reminding pupils the importance of where it is on the place value chart. But I looked at your negatives, and you said -5, add -2. I just can tell from a lot of these that it's the right language in your classroom.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, that's a big deal. Here's another one of this kind of ilk. It's making the link between division, multiplication with decimal, a fraction, and percentages, and linking them all together. Essentially, this task here, I think there's more to be done with this one. I'm not actually that happy with it. I like the template, but I think there's more to be done. I also want a column in there which uses 400 over 10. I want that added in. And I think the variation in the numbers maybe isn't as good as it could be, but this is what happens with these tasks. Like, you'll see on there might actually be 2 or 3 tasks I've put in which address the same thing, and that's because I'm thinking, actually, well, that was okay, but this might be better. And like I was saying about the negatives, there's no one task which is going to hit the nail on the head for any topic. You can't just do one task and now know the idea and be conceptually understanding it and fluent with it as well. There's a whole host of things.
Quite a few of your tasks, I never put this the right way, but I saw in your book about being, is it connectionless? In other words, working one way and working the other. I think in layman's terms, I'd say working forwards and being able to work backwards. But in other words, making the connections that's the case. So I see that a number of times in your tasks as well.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly this one as well. The story of 4 sevens.
Oh, wow.
So here it's okay. We've got the part-whole relationship. And then obviously when you're shading 4 sevens of the circles, that's easy because there are 7 of them. But when it's 4 sevens of the triangles, it's more challenging because you've now got to understand that proportionally. It's 4 out of every 7, writing it in words, placing it in a number line, doing it abstractly here at the bottom. What is 4 sevens of 63? The multiplication meaning. What division does 4 sevens represent? What is the quotient? What's the decimal we're going to get from that? Then we've got the ratio interpretation of it, 4 apples and 7 bananas. So the number of apples is 4/11ths of the fruit, and all this, the ratio meaning we've got a whole host of stuff going on in there. There's equivalence, there's given fractions which add, and that's something we use with our new intake at the start of secondary to kind of assess where they are with the fractions. It's a task we've used, and we build from there.
That's really nice. I'm going to suggest if anyone's watching this and then does the screenshot on Twitter, that's the screenshot just there, because this like, I mean, that 4/7 thing I find really interesting. When I first met atomization, and I think we were talking about dividing fractions, and the first lesson that somebody had put in the order was 4/7 is the same as 4 divided by 7. That's the first lesson in the learning journey, because it's not that relationship, again, that connection between the two is not made. And what a nice idea there with the number of apples is 4/11ths of the fruit, to recognize that the whole isn't 4, the whole isn't 7, because you can see 2 numbers, it must be 4/7ths. This is a lovely task. There's one that Steve Lomax does through Can Do Maths, which is similar to this. Well, it reminds me of it, where it's 4 times 7 is 28, and it has all the related facts. So it would say 7 times 4 is 28. 28 divided by 7 is 4. Then it would be 4/7 of 28 is, and pardon me, a 7th of 28 is 4, and so on. And then and this feels similar, where you said it's secondary ready. That Can Do Maths task is similar to this. For me, it's secondary ready. That's a lovely task.
Yeah, thank you. That's nice to say. It's one of these things where it's that connectionist idea is what you're talking about. And I think one of the dangers I have with atomization, like atomization is useful as a strategy for planning learning, but unless you join those dots together, then it's not going to help much. And you've got to give kids the opportunity to clash those together. Perhaps I could take you on now to the curriculum booklets, which is the thing I'm most excited about just now. I'm working on this with a colleague, Siobhan McKenna, who used to work with me at my previous school, and she's a head department now in another school, and I'm head of department in this school I'm in. And us two and another guy, Gary Lamb, we are working together to build this curriculum for all three of our schools. And the idea here is it's got to be better than anything we've had before and better than we can pick up off the shelf. Now, we haven't written all of it. There's a big disclaimer there. I have stolen and plagiarized from everywhere. So if someone says you can't share that online, I'll take bits of it down or whatever. But people have been very, very kind in sharing in that way. And the idea here is the curriculum that our kids who are working at third level, which is like Key Stage 3 in England, what they're working at, this will take them kind of through that journey. Now, someone said, oh, it's not catered to our curriculum, it's Scotland. Well, it's not catered for the Scottish curriculum either, because if I was catering it for the Scottish curriculum, I'd be doing the kids a disservice, because our curriculum documentation isn't good enough. It doesn't spell out the journey for mathematics well enough. So we kind of felt as if we take it into our own hands. So I'm proud of this because it's better than what I've had before. I've been involved in the writing about 4 or 5 different schemes of work over the year. And, you know, each time you get a bit better. And I hope this one is kind of getting us there. I'll show you, I'll go into a couple of these booklets. I'll not spend too long, but the first one here, Arithmetic Essentials, which is all of the booklets kind of go back in and they tidy up some loose ends from primary and then move forward a bit. And the idea here is like we're just looking in that first one with some additive structure, but using the additive structure properly. This is Tony Gardner, this idea was from, and I've adapted it a bit. And you, by reordering there, we've got the 100 bond and so on, and that's fairly easy. And you're taking it through and you've been intelligent. And then we've got some mental calculations here with decimals. And one of the things I was keen to do in this booklet here is like, whole number work and decimal work are the same topic. You're not going to have those discretely. It's not sensible by this stage of schooling. What adds to this to give us one? What adds just quick and sharp? You want that
even the quick show of algebra there. A plus B, it's not what you're teaching, but the fact you've thrown that in, it can be really powerful, actually.
Yeah, that's the idea. And then this little task here, again, it's building up. If you know 12 minus 4, you then know 12 minus 4.5, and so 12 minus 4.55. Again, that'd be modelled on a Tony Gardner type task there. Running through, this is from Smile. Sorry, I keep doing that. This is from Smile, and it's a word search. You fit a decimal search. You're finding decimals which sum to 10, and it's just a nice bit of enrichment in there for them. And they've got 4 practice grids, so you can find rows, columns, or diagonals which are of length 2, which sum to 10, of length 3, which sum to 10, and so on.
Fabulous task. It's not yours, admittedly. You say
no, it's not.
Thank you for sharing it. I've not seen that before.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, this one here is one I'm on. It's looking at decimal addition, but coming at it from a different perspective. And this is about flexible thinking and really getting into the nitty gritty of place value a little bit. It's not that, of course, it's not the method you want kids to use in the long term, but you want them to understand what's going on. So you're using the lengthened version before you get into a shortened version. Subtraction in there too. I'm not going to talk about every page in this, but then there's multiplication strategies and so on, similar to we had with addition, a little bit of Don Stewart enrichment. And then again, this isn't a fractions booklet, but you know, there's a little bit of connection there. Like, how can we do these harder divisions? Well, we could write them as a fraction and simplify. So it's planning that, because these are the sort of little things in the past when I was teaching the class. Oh, hold on, there's a cool thing I'll show you, and I'll show you at the side on the board here for a couple of minutes. It's not officially in the scheme of work anywhere that I've explicitly to teach you this. Mm-hmm. But now by having it in the booklet, the teacher will look at that and say, oh, right, yeah, I know that. Well, I'll make sure I communicate this to the kids and give them a little bit of time to do that. So here's a strategy. Moving on, the Continual tens chart is the basis of this. And the idea here is you're using this chart to unify your whole number and decimal number work. And I've got a whole host of tasks in there where kids are stepping up and down and sideways. And it's very scaffolded. It builds upon that. There's an old blog post by Alf Coles, which I think is on the ATM website, where he talks about this, and I've kind of built upon his work there. And then there's this one here, which is about multiplication by 700 and doing it both ways. And getting the sense it doesn't matter if you do times 7 times 100 or times 100 times 7. And we're just building through, and you notice the decimals are there the whole time. I'm not keeping those separate, and we run through, and there's division as well.
This feels like extremely awesome fluency. With some
Yeah,
problem solving, and because it's appearing in different ways, it just doesn't. Fluency can be lost in the worksheet looking the same all the time. And what you're demonstrating here is great fluency for the task, real understanding of what's going on, but also showing that the tasks don't have to look the same all the time. I noticed the empty box one when you went past it as well.
Yeah, again.
I mean, I'm a huge open middle fan, because that's resilience as well. And if there's something we have to teach our pupils, certainly in this time, but if not always, resilience is so important.
Yeah, that's it. And so that type of task, these things here are mixed in. So that's a kind of flavour of what these are about. And I could run through, there's millions of stuff in these, but anyway, that's that one. And I'll showcase another one just out of conversation's sake. And for instance, well, I'll let you pick, Tom. Do we do integers or fractions? Negative numbers or fractions?
Ooh, fractions, because we looked a little bit at negative numbers earlier on, so fractions probably.
No. Right, so there are 2 fractions booklets here. And the idea here, and again, I can't claim that I've written all the tasks in this. In fact, this is Siobhan McKenna, my friend that wrote most of this booklet. I stuck a couple more tasks in. We start off with a revision of some stuff we'd done earlier in the year. So it is very procedural because we're tapping into what we already know. And then from there, we've got the task you showcased earlier. And then we're building up. We've got this one here, which I'd maybe want to put on its side. It's a spider diagram, 1 whole is 60. So we're going over here. What's a fifth? What's 3/5? If you know a fifth, you know a 10th. You know a fifth, you know a 15th. Relational understanding is what that's about there. Now we're looking at multiplication. Siobhan's done a nice job with this. So it's a half of 4 is the same as a half times 4, but we can think about them geometrically quite differently. So that is a half of 4 on this side, whereas in this one it is 4 halves. And there's a subtle difference there, but obviously procedurally what we're doing isn't much different. And then building up, taking that further forward, we've got if 1/6 is 7, what is 1/7? Right, so your forwards and backwards type things, using a bit of bar modeling in there. Again, I don't want fractions, decimals, and percentages to be distinct, so we will have a specific percentages booklet, but let's not pretend that early secondary kids have never seen percentage before. They have, so let's naturally talk about it here. And we've got a little bit of kind of diagrammatic stuff as a reminder. Like, can you write that as a percentage? Yeah, get it as a fraction with denominator 100. So we'll get that. Building on, there's more pictorial. So maybe controversially, we decided to focus on multiplication and division of fractions before we did addition and subtraction. There are reasons for that, but we felt it linked better with find the fraction of them out and so on. And it gets kids to think, it basically thinking about division, partitive and quotative division. So this, the idea here with some of these things, it's like, okay, we've got a half, we're dividing by 2. But then if we go to the flip side, we've now got, where are we here? I'll have some in it, I'm sure. If I've now got 1 divided by a half, you can't do that by partition. You've got to think how many halves go into the one. It's a different way of thinking about it.
I talk about division a lot, about language, and you've done it exactly there again. That how can you re-say that question? Not 1 divided by a half. How many halves go into 1, or how many halves are in 1 whole? And that changes the question entirely. And I've got a feeling there's a slide coming up, because I'm sure I looked at yours yesterday again about this, where you've done the relationship between, let's say 6 divided by a half is the same as 6 times 2.
Yeah,
that's on one of your slides. I've got a feeling it'll be in this booklet, I would imagine, which is lovely. Really nice to make that relationship.
Yeah, well, that's the idea there. So that is like one of the booklets. So we've got, the idea here is we've got a mixed attainment block, which has got a whole host of stuff in there. We've got phase 2, which is like got these topics. Then we've got phase 3. The algebra 1 booklet is going to come up on, it's finished and it's going to get uploaded on Sunday, 17th of January.
Wonderful.
So it's coming, and the equations 1 booklet is about done as well.
Pause the screen, hold on a second. It's important we roll down a second. If you scroll down just a little bit. You're going up the other way. Down, that would be up. Yeah, so up, sorry. That's my fault. I was going to highlight this later on, but you notice on the right-hand side there, people, buy him a coffee. See that? Support the website, buy him a coffee.
Cheers. Yeah, I like a coffee. So the intention is we'll share this entire curriculum, and the idea here is that you might not see a topic name there, but it will be in there. It'll be in one of the booklets, and we're trying to build a coherent journey. So it's like we've sat down and we've thought really carefully, because like Siobhan and I did this before we built a curriculum, but it was very different the way we did it, and we learned a lot from that, working together, and we saw things that worked well, things that didn't work well, things that flowed. And we've both done a lot of reading since then and what have you. So I'm hoping that this is better. It's far from perfect. And as you use it with classes over the course of a couple of years, you'll refine it. But so the versions that are up here just now aren't even the first version. These have been used with classes and tweaked a bit even since then.
I think I saw that in your conclusion, didn't you? That you've got your task, write down what happened so you can alter it next year as well. They'll never be perfect. And
yeah, that is it.
On a personal note, I always found that really difficult. I still find it difficult sometimes. But I love that, the two words you used earlier on, reflective practitioners. Well, what went right about that lesson? What went wrong? How will the task be better next time? And you try it again. Yeah. We're never going to make it right or perfect. It's a hard thing to swallow, but it's definitely true. Yeah,
definitely. Also on here, I'll not labour this, for colleagues in Scotland, or if you're teaching A-level down in England, I've got this higher maths. It is very Scottish focused. It's our topics. So it's a kind of a selection of tasks which are in that kind of course order. But, I know there's a heck of a lot of overlap. So if you're doing logs or you're introducing calculus, there's stuff in there for you. So just because it's Scottish higher doesn't mean you can't use it.
I'm completely thrown by something then on Chris. I know we get the thing about sharing a screen sometimes shows adverts, and I love the fact Sean Connery.
That is, yeah, I know.
You're going through the Scottish curriculum, and Sean Connery pops up just to say hello.
That is it, isn't it?
Brilliant. Oh, I love that. How cookies work sometimes, and it embarrass you and show what you've been shopping on, for example. But carry on, please.
Yeah, there's a little section here for primary maths as well. I need to get that a little bit more up to date. But I've picked out some individual tasks on basic number and on some fraction work there, and a little bit of negatives and a little bit of area, which I think would be applicable in primary school. There's a bit here where I'm showcasing this course that I run.
Indeed.
Defining mathematical tasks. A shameless plug here.
Please do.
It's a 3-part course on designing tasks. And yeah, if people are interested, they can sign up there. I've also got a shameless plug for the book and a wee bit of chat about that. Yep. And then there's the blog articles, and I haven't blogged for a little while, but if you're interested in reading thoughts from me over the years, there's about 20 different blogs in there. A lot of them are reflections on lessons. Some are about curriculum design. I do want to get back into blogging again, but one of the things I felt since I wrote the book, I never want to write again. So I've got things I want to say, but I just can't face typing them up. So I find it easier to do stuff like this, or go to a conference and just chat for an hour, than I do to formally type it all up. And the other thing is people have been saying on Twitter a little bit recently, you spend a hell of a lot of time on a blog and you don't get much traffic out of it. You think, is it actually worth the time doing it? Whereas, you go to a course and you talk, you go to a conference, you talk, or you do something like this, a few hundred people see it and you get to see what you've got to say, and that's the piece there. So yeah, that's about it for the website.
You've missed something important out. Submit a task.
Oh, yeah, apologies. Yeah.
Well, I know that my friend Amy Coley, who'll be watching this, she designed something based on your website, and if she hasn't sent it in, send it in, Amy. The fact you've been showing that 0 pairs thing, I made a similar thing for X's using algebra tiles, so I must send you that. And you'll reject it, but that's fine. But send them in, because the fact that, well, again, I call it the McGrane-esque thing, but if they're of this demeanor as such, or this type, then it's nice that it's all in one place. And that's what I love about doing this series, is that people are sharing so willingly. It's just great.
Yeah, well, if I look at the most recent 20, say, tasks on here, very few of those are for me. The most recent ones I've had quite a lot shared with me, either from people who've taken part in the course or people who've read the book or whatever. I've just seen stuff on Twitter. I've had people in my own department now. You could see just by the preview of those tasks, those are in that kind of format which we've been talking about today. So I'm delighted to host other good quality tasks that people have come up with. And particularly if there's something I've not got a task for yet, then, if you've got something, then please do send it in.
Brilliant. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to, A, share everything that you do, and also the time just in the last, I think it's been 45 minutes, it's absolutely flown, just talking through your task design and ideas behind it. I'm going to share screen again, if I may, just because I really enjoyed this quote and it made me think that we'd get on. When I was just reading something from the funny book, it seemed to go, it's simply not good enough. And when people just turn around and say, oh yeah, I think you carry on by saying something similar to, well, you seem to go, well, you think they got it. How do you know?
Yeah.
It's the point. How do you know they got it? And you haven't got the evidence afterwards. You've got to go back and find that evidence. The other quote I've already given about the task design, which I thought was important. I'd also put this on my PowerPoint to remind people, buy Chris a coffee or buy the book. Or go on the course, all good ways to support it, but also there's plenty to be learned there, clearly. The cheesy thing that I do now, do you know, I'm beginning to think that no one knows this 80s album, and it's actually now beginning to be painful, but do you know the 80s album from which I'm taking the mick here?
Oh, I'm looking at this and I'm trying to think. No, I don't know.
It's No Jacket Required, Phil Collins. This is lost.
Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be. You're supposed to get it. That's the point. Otherwise, I look silly. But the point of this is to remind ourselves how many beautiful, great resources there are online. It's not that I'm anti-textbook, because as you said, Chris, there are plenty of good ways of using textbook. My point is, what are your favorite online resources and why? You've chosen, we chatted just before we started recording, and I will press this button here. This is the first one you've chosen, mathshko.com.
Yeah, Helen Constantine, we corresponded a bit for the book. She contributed a couple of tasks, but I just think she's an amazing task designer. She shares lovely tasks for understanding, problem solving, and what she's got here is they're so beautifully put together. Like her typography, the way she does it. If you click on say anything at all, equivalent expressions, for instance, if you click on that, just anything at all, and everything just looks so polished, and you can see straight away this isn't just routine work. It's the sort of stuff I wish I had written myself. I just feel that every time I look at one of her tasks, I'm just like, that is exactly what I was hoping to achieve, but you've done it better.
Downloadable straight away as well. That, as you say, I always think everything I make looks absolute rubbish. I mean, look at your one with your website where you've got the block, the blue bar at the top saying the website as well, and it always looks so polished. I do feel a bit ashamed when I show up some of my work. So instead of me feeling inferior, I'm going to move on to the other website you've chosen, which is cimt.org.uk. Yeah,
I shared this on Twitter a wee while ago because I felt as if people don't use it enough. I think it's excellent. There's a heck of a lot of great stuff in here. If you're talking about getting into the resources, if we go into, I think, getting the MEP, the Maths Enhancement Project.
Oh, pardon me. Oh, yep.
Links there, yep. And we go down to secondary and we click on, for instance, year 8 material, perhaps. Not the interactive material, but
this one here.
Yeah, that one would be good.
Now the internet's going to go slow. There we are.
Yeah, and we can click in here and we can go down a bit. And what you'll get in here is they've got all these books, but they're electronic versions of them. And you could just tell the people that wrote it were very smart. I believe that some of this work was actually based upon observation of learning and teaching in Hungary. And the quality variation you talk about, this isn't the resources, but this is there's online stuff like this, but you can get, I can't remember the exact link, but you can get the PDFs of the books in there, and there's assessment material and all sorts of stuff in there. I just say it's a treasure trove of stuff. So Go and have a look. We've again shamelessly stolen things from it as well and putting together more booklets. It's fantastic.
We've referred to Malcolm Swan's document from 2006 a couple of times, and you wanted that to be almost the third resource for this this section of the hour. The standards units, but there's the document that comes alongside it, the improving learning in maths challenges and strategies. You can find that on Colleen Young's blog, so I'll put the link to that on the website. But yeah, all these standards tasks are so often I hear it that they're just underused, yet all the work that went into them.
Yeah, they are world class. Like there's nothing better that exists in these materials. And again, it's so easy to not read the notes that come with them. Like see that one at the top there. Yeah, if you click the little PDF at the side, I think it's opened anyway. Yeah,
oh, okay.
Yeah. The blurb is the key thing here. Again, it's like you could look at this and think, oh, it's just a sorting task. But they actually, Malcolm Swan and colleagues, this was about lesson design. It wasn't just about task design. And they trialed it and iterated it many, many times. I talked to Hugh Burkhart, who was a colleague of Malcolm's at the Shell Centre, and he explained how the money that went into these, because they tested and tested and tested and tested these tasks with the kids until they just knew what would happen. Like you want to talk about, people are always talking about evidence and what have you, evidence-based teaching. This is evidence-based teaching. If you use this stuff will happen. And it's not direct at all. There's a little bit in it where the scripted bits you have to say, and the rest of it, the kids get stuck. Lots of stuck. And that's amazing, because when they get stuck, it's when they learn.
I know Mark McCourt talked about the 30-year cycle of education, but it's nice to see it broken that 15 years ago, whatever it was, that they were showing representation. But according to the 30-year cycle with Mark McCourt, 15 years ago, no one cared about representation, but it's back in now, and so it should be. And as it features in so many of your tasks. Chris, I don't want to take any more of your time, because I think we've reached an hour. I've actually lost track of time entirely, but I'm always determined that these don't take longer than an hour. Because people, in fact, people are actually giving up their time to do this and watch this. Is fantastic. But I want them to spend more time going onto your website than watching me and you chat about it. So Chris, on behalf of everyone whose resources, who uses your resources and gets inspired by them, thank you so much. Thank you for spending the time as well. And final shameless plug, why not? There it is, people, available on Amazon now and other good booksellers, of course. But Chris, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Tom. Cheers.